Welcome to the Circuit of Success. I'm your host, Brett Gilliland, and today I am so excited. I'm going to call you a business legend. Is that all right, Howard?
Oh, yeah, right. Real legend.
Real
Before my
legend,
time.
says. You'll find I've got a humble leader here with me today, but Howard Behar is our guest, and Howard was the founding president of Starbucks. I'm sure you guys have heard about that little coffee company that started out in Seattle, Washington, and blew up to what it is today. And so we're just very thankful, Howard, for your service and what you did for Starbucks and for you being with us today. So thanks for joining us.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Absolutely. So if you can, Howard, on every show, I always talk about what's made you the man you are today. And I know that's a wide open question, but always curious about the backstory of what made Howard the man he is today.
Well, I think everybody would say this, is that somewhere along the line, their families made a difference in their lives. And certainly that was no different for me. My father was very influential in my life and taught me some valuable lessons that I didn't realize that he'd taught me until I was much older in my life. And so that, no question about it, family of origin. And then, the set of experiences, the disappointments I had in my life, the challenges that I had in my life, and mostly people that helped me along the way. One particular individual, a guy named Jim Jensen, who when I was in my mid-20s, he exposed me to a man named Robert Greenleaf's work on servant leadership. He exposed me to some work by a man named John Boyle, who had a course called Omega that was taught you about how your brain works and how we create habits and how we change habits. And to an organization called the Pacific Institute, which it was headquartered in Seattle, a guy named Lou Tice, and a lot of those things along the way, just people, and then people that I worked with. They change your life, and so I'm an accumulation of 1,000 people.
Well, I like that. I'm gonna read something that when I was doing my research on you, that Howard Schultz, the founder of Starbucks, said about you, and it says, "The success of Starbucks Coffee Company, of which none of us could have possibly imagined, is deeply rooted in the authorship, the leadership, and the love of Howard Behar, provided Starbucks Coffee Company." That's what he said about you, and Howard obviously is well known in the world for starting the company, but it's people like you that talk about servant leadership that helped make Starbucks what it is today. So talk to us about that journey. I mean, when you started, there were how many Starbucks locations were there?
28 stores when I started.
28 stores just in Seattle, correct?
Yeah, well, no, we had a couple of stores in Vancouver, Canada, and a couple of stores in Chicago, but everything else was in Seattle.
Unbelievable. And so talk to us about that ride.
It was a small company, and Howard had a big dream. When I first met Howard, he was looking for a VP of operations. And we sat down and we talked, we had breakfast, and he had this long list of criteria that he wanted in this person. And, I hardly fit any of them. The first one on the list, he had a college degree. I didn't have a college degree. Second thing on the list was, did you have food service experience? I didn't have that. Finally, we get down to number 10. Can you breathe? Yes, I can breathe.
Yes.
But I didn't qualify for enough to make the list. And not only that, but at that time, I was looking for a business to buy. I was tired of being in the corporate world, and I wanted to do something myself. And so, then about a year passed, and by accident, we got together again, and he was still looking to fill that position. Excuse me. And I said to him, well, look, why don't I work in the company for a week for free? I'd like to work in the stores. I'd like to work in the warehouse. I'd like to work on the trucks. And you look at me and I'll look at you. And at the end of the week, if you still want to extend an invitation for me then to join, then, and if I still think it's the right thing, then we'll have an agreement. And that's how it went. And we did.
Wow.
And by the end of that first week, I knew it was the right place for me.
And what were you doing at that time? Did you have a job and just kind of quit that job to go into this?
No. I'd been president of a land development company that got in trouble, and we sold it. And I ended up taking about a year and a half off and looking for something to do that, but it was trying to find a businesses to buy. Actually, I wasn't looking for a job. And I'd found a couple of things, but along the way, this Howard intercepted that, and I ended up going to Starbucks, and I never regretted it one day.
And so, I mean, at that time, it's not like Starbucks is what it is today, and making all this money. I mean, and from what I had read, you guys were struggling, and some of the things that we'll probably get into later, that some just unbelievable stories that you guys did for employees and even customers. But what
We were
was it
losing
about
money, a
either
lot of money.
Howard or Starbucks that said this is the right spot?
Well, I've been a goal setter, and I write things down, and I also have my mission statement and my values and what I call my 6 Ps written down, and those are how I live my life, how I want to run a business, and I had all this stuff down. And Howard and I compared our lists, and they were almost identical. I thought everybody in the company should get to vote in their own areas of expertise. Everybody should have a piece of the action, have equity in the company. And people should be treated with respect and dignity. And Howard felt the same way. And so then I knew, and particularly after working there for a week, I understood, what was going on there. And so it was really the combination of values, of the mission statement, my own, and the things that matched up with me. I always believe that, we're not victims. We can choose what we do in life. We may not all be president of the United States or all be president of Starbucks or whatever it happens to be, but we can choose the things we do and the people that we associate with.
Amen.
And the organizations that we work with. And so, I just always searched that out. And that when I was doing my work trying to find a business, those things mattered to me, before I thought about going to Starbucks, just how I wanted to live my life and how I wanted to operate the business. Huh. And it just so happened that that's worked at Starbucks.
Wow. And so when you guys came together, I mean, was the plan to go globally and build this? I know you always said it's not about the coffee, it's about people, right? But what was the plan at that time?
Yeah, the plan was to survive. Yeah, that was the plan. And over time, as we got better at what we did and we saw our successes, and we saw some failures too, which concerned us and we had to fix. When I first started there, I was there 3 months, and you don't get all the information when they're hiring you. And I'm looking at all the P&Ls and the cash flows, and I realized we had a huge problem in Chicago. We were losing money, and venture capital money was going to dry up if we didn't fix that problem. So I moved to Chicago to figure out what was wrong, and I stayed there 3 months, and I came back with a plan, and we executed the plan, and it worked. And then we just started expanding, and as we expanded, the stores were profitable, and we started to know little by little that we really had something here. And then it just took off. And it wasn't Howard or I that built the company. It was the people of Starbucks that built the company.
Yeah, and I know you talked about, or I also read you had H2O. It was you and the two Howards and Orrin Smith, right? So talk to us about that threesome of team that you had there.
Right. That was, I always say that if I was ever going to get married to two guys, they'd be the two guys I'd get married to. So maybe I could do that in Utah, although I don't think that's legal anymore either.
Right.
But we just fit together perfectly. I mean, Howard and I argued a lot. I mean, we argued about lots of things, and they got really heated. They weren't little kind, gentle arguments always, but Orrin was always the peacemaker. He was the guy that was always trying to calm the two of us down, because we were both highly charged individuals, and both of us cared a lot about what we were doing, and Orrin was cared too, but he was calmer. And so the combination of the three of us were great. It was like, playing basketball. We always knew where the other person was on the court without having to look.
Yeah, and that's a big deal. So let's talk about serving human beings. I when I read about you and research you, that's what I find is the common theme that comes up is serving other human beings. And were you born with that? Is that something you learned over the years? How did that become so important and vital to your success?
Well, I credit that to my parents, and particularly my father. My father was an immigrant to Seattle in 1911 as a 15-year-old. He left his family in Bulgaria, never saw him again except for one brother. And he worked in a place called the Pike Place Market, which is a public market in Seattle. And it had just opened, and it was really, it wasn't a tourist destination like it is now. It was actually a distribution center for all the farmers, all the truck farmers around the Seattle area to distribute to small grocery stores, et cetera. And so he saved his money, and he opened up a little tiny grocery store out in the north end of Seattle by the University of Washington. And as a kid growing up, he was 50 when I was born. So, as a kid growing up, I would go to the store every day after school. Right. And I remember one great example that that I didn't understand its importance till later on in life. And I was up by the front counter at the register, and my father was ringing up a customer. In those days, it was a hand crank register and buttons that you pushed down. There was no electronics,
Right.
and a cash drawer, that you made change out of. And so he said to me, Howard, go get me a couple of baskets of strawberries. And so I went in the back of the store where the fruit was, and I brought back 2 baskets of strawberries. And he took the baskets of strawberries and he put them in the bag. And the customer left. And I was old enough at that time to realize that he hadn't rung those things up on the cash register. And I said, Dad, you forgot to ring those strawberries up. And he just looked at me and he said, Howard, not everything we do in life do we need to get paid for. Sometimes we do things to just help other people. He said, those people that we call our customers, they're not just our customers, they're our neighbors and our friends. And I happen to know that they're in tough times right now, and they love strawberries, but strawberries are expensive and they can't afford them. And so it's just my way of treating them as friends. And that was such a great example that I didn't realize till later on in life. Not everything we do in life do we need to get paid for. And it's not just money do we need to get paid for. Do we need to get paid for emotionally or whatever it is? Sometimes we do things just to help others because they need the help. And that was just such a great example that it stuck with me the rest of my life. And so that whole people thing kind of came out of those kinds of experiences in my family. I was the third born in the family. My sister is 14 years older. My brother's 10 years older. And I was the baby of the family. And so I was always around adults. And, they treated me with great respect. I mean, My parents used to go out to dinner. I was going along with them. Typically going out to dinner meant going to a brother or sister's house of my mother. And so it was just that piece that I got. And then it kind of developed over time. And, I developed it in myself. And then when I was in my mid-20s, I really, through some challenges that I had, I really got interested in what made me tick. Who was I? What were my values? And I never thought about it before, but because of the challenge I had, I was kind of forced to deal with that. And so I did, and I identified through some work what my core values were, and what my mission statement was for my life, and what I call my 6 Ps were. And so those things informed my life. And I learned a lot at that time. And that's when I got interested in servant leadership. And I just kept, moving forward on that. And I got interested in what made other people tick. And so, that was, important to me. And I just stayed on that journey. And I'm still on that journey.
And so if somebody asks you, Howard, what are those core values? My business partner, Tim Hammett, talks about trust, respect, humility. You hear them all the time, right? They're just ingrained in who he is. And so what are your core values?
I have 8 core values, or 9 core values: honesty, fairness, respect for self and others, responsibility, integrity, trust in self and others, caring, and love. And those are my core values. And if I could show you a picture, they're sitting right on my desk right above me, because I don't want to forget. I've had them written down in varying forms for almost 40 years.
Yeah.
They're still up there in front of me. And then I have a personal mission statement. It goes like this: every day I want to nurture and inspire the human spirit, beginning with myself first and then for others. The reason why I say self first is what I've learned in life is if you're not okay with you, it's very difficult to nurture and inspire the human spirit of another human being.
That's right.
And then I have how I do everything, my 6 Ps.
So let's talk about those. I wrote those down to talk about later, but we'll just talk about them now because you've mentioned them a few times, and let's talk about those.
This is how I want to do everything in my life. Everything in my life I have to do with purpose bigger than myself. It has to do something to serve others. And it isn't, I don't do things just to do things. I do things, that's not exactly true. I like to go fishing to just go fishing,
right.
But
just to fish.
Living my life, but purpose bigger than myself. And if I have a purpose bigger than myself, then I darn well better be passionate about it. I scream it from the highest rooftops because it holds me accountable, and I let everybody know, and I let myself know, and I have a lot of energy around it. And then persistence. I have to have persistence with everything I do. We know there are always rocks in the river in our journeys, and we don't know where those rocks are going to be, but we're rolling down the river, and all of a sudden, boom, we hit a rock. And we have to figure out to go over it, around it, under it, or through it. And, or we have to change our direction, so to speak. But persistence matters. Probably it's the single most important word that I would describe every entrepreneur that I've ever met. They are just persistent. They don't know from no. It was Howard Schultz's greatest strength. If he hit a rock, it didn't even faze him. He just kept going. And then you have to have patience. Not everything comes in the time frame you want to have it come. And you'd think that persistence and patience are opposites to each other, but they're not. Sometimes you have to be patiently persistent. You have to stay with it, but you have to have patience. You can't give up. And then the fifth P is performance. It's something that human beings, we don't like to be measured. We hate it. We don't like to get grades in school and all those things because, if we get an A, we like it, but we don't get that many A's in our lives.
Right.
And if we have a relationship with somebody else, with marriage, a significant other, we get measured all the time. It may not be right out in front. We may not get a report card every day, but performance matters. And if you make a commitment to do something, it matters that you live up to that commitment. In a marriage, if you make a commitment to live a monogamous life, then that's performance. To take out the garbage, if that's your job, that's performance. And it matters. I always like to make a joke, if you want to find out, how it works, you can buy whatever your spouse's or significant other's favorite wine is. Go buy a really expensive bottle of that wine. And then while you're doing it, buy a couple of really nice crystal Riedel glasses that, they cost about $60 to $100 a piece, and go home that night and sit down in front of your significant other and say, honey, this is your lucky day, and I know you like this wine, so I bought some, but I'd like to have a conversation. And by the way, honey, this is going to be your annual performance review.
Yeah.
Yeah, but performance matters.
Yeah.
It really matters. And people don't think it does, but it does. If you're working in an organization, you make a commitment to get something done, you either get it done or you tell somebody before it's due or that you're not going to make it and ask for help.
Yep.
And and then the final P is everything we do in life has to be about people. There's no job that we will ever have, no career that we will ever have that isn't about serving others.
That's right.
If you're a doctor, it's about serving others. A lawyer, if you're a teacher, if you're an architect, an engineer, or if you're a server of coffee, it's about people. And you can try to escape that, but you can't. No. That's what it is. And if you recognize that early on, or as best as you can, you're going to have a much more fulfilling life.
So talk to us about that patience. I mean, I think a lot of business owner type A, you mentioned earlier, you and Howard were both that way. That's a hard one, right? I mean, I know for me, I've been in the financial services industry for 18, 19 years, but running my own firm for the last a little over 5 years. And that patience, right? You want things to happen quicker than they do. Yeah. So how do we deal with that? How do we stay patient, but also still be persistent?
Well, we have to understand that not everything comes in the time frame that you want it to come. It's like, people that start businesses many times think, well, I'm going to be open for a year and things are going to be going well. As you know, from your own personal experience, it takes a long time to build a clientele. It takes time to figure out what you're doing. You're making some mistakes along the way. And you have to have patience with yourself. You have to forgive yourself a little bit when it doesn't come as fast as you want it. And if you have an organization, usually it means that you have people that you're working with. They don't always come as fast as you want them to come along, but you have to have patience with them too. And you have children?
I do. I have 4 boys.
Okay, well, then firsthand about patience.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So you can maybe want them to do something, but it's not the way it is.
Doesn't work that way.
It just doesn't work that way. And so, you have to forgive, you have to have patience, you have to have all those things. And so it just matters in life. It doesn't mean that you aren't driven. I'm not talking about that. I'm driven to get things done in my life, but I'm also patient about the fact I don't make excuses to myself. Doesn't mean that I, I'll let it do it tomorrow. Procrastination. I'm not talking about procrastination.
Yep.
I'm talking about patience and the timing of things and when they really happen, and not give up. And that's where persistence and patience work together.
That's right. So talk to us about, how do you go globally? I want to talk a lot about Starbucks and that's your world, right? That's what you did for 22 years. And so how did you guys, what do you think? I know it's people and I know it's the mission, the vision, but what do you think were some of those other secrets, if you will, to how you grew it to what it is today? That's really an American icon of one of the biggest, best companies out there.
Well, I'd like to tell you there's a different secret other than people. There isn't. It's, look, the people that you associate yourself, the people that you recruit into your organization, the responsibilities you give people, the accountability that you charge them with, that's what matters. And,
Right.
I remember Howard and we had our first all-store managers meeting in Seattle at the basketball stadium. And there were 7,000 people that showed up. Howard and I were sitting
Wow.
down in the front row, and we both stood up and we looked over our shoulders, and the place was just jamming. And the people were almost, the whole stadium was full. And we looked at each other and we said, how the hell did this happen? And the truth of the matter is, it was those people that made it happen.
Yeah.
Now, Howard and I and Orrin, we had responsibilities to knock down the hurdles, to raise the cash, to make sure we had enough money to operate on, to make sure that everybody was aligned with our values and our mission statement in the organization, hold ourselves accountable and hold them accountable, and then to set the tone, set the energy level in the organization. But it was the people that made it happen. Now, my responsibility, I probably, I spent my whole time at Starbucks talking about the importance of people and why that mattered and what that meant. It's not just that people are important, but what does it mean? It means, how do we treat each other? How we hold each other accountable? How we perform? All those things. And so, but I had my own goals and dreams, and I was leading the North American operation, and we were growing pretty fast. And I wanted to start the international business, and so I made a pitch to the board, and that I'd like to start international business. So I did a business plan. Now, I'd never run anything outside of North America.
Right.
The truth of the matter is, probably today I would never get that job, but because I pitched it, and I went out and got some help with a big time consulting firm to back me up, and we did a business plan, and I presented it to the board, and it took a couple of years to get them to agree, but we finally did. It took Starbucks International. But again, I started the day I left North American operations. I went from having plus or minus 10,000 people directly or indirectly reporting to me to zero. I didn't even have an administrative assistant. And so I started all over again from zero. I didn't even really have any money I had to
no budget,
borrow and steal. And I committed to the company that I'd have it cash flow positive within 5 years. And so I'd set some tough goals for myself. And so then I started recruiting in the company. You'd think it would be easy, that people would say, I wanted to be part of that. It was incredible how difficult it was.
really.
I remember a guy that I needed somebody for finance, somebody for human resources, somebody for operations, somebody for deal making, and I needed somebody for supply chain. And the first person I went after was the head of human resources. And I found a great person, and she agreed to come on board. But then I was looking for somebody in finance, and I knew 3 or 4 people in the company that I had identified as great candidates. And the first one, my first choice, was a guy that had a Harvard MBA. He was a great finance guy. He was really well thought of in the company. And I sat down with him and I said, I won't give you his name, but I said, would you like to join the team? We're going to change the world. We're going to change the world using coffee as a vehicle to do that around the world. And I laid out the whole dream. And what do you think the first question he asked me?
It's I don't know. I have 1,000 questions in my mind.
He said to me, how much am I going to get paid?
Well, I was thinking that, but I didn't want to say it.
Yeah. Then the second question he asked me is, what's my title going to be? And I said, thank you very much, and I'll get back to you.
See ya. Yeah.
And so then I went to my second choice, a guy that I just love that I actually hired, a guy named Troy Alstead. And I laid out exactly the same dream. And what do you think his first question was?
How do we make it happen?
When do I start?
Oh, okay, yeah.
No, how much pay? No, what my title was going to be. What do you think? Troy ended up being the president of the company. He became the CFO and then the president of the company. And then he left to start his own business recently.
Yeah, he made more money than he probably ever dreamed possible.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but he never asked. And so it was that team that made it happen. I was the driver of it. I was the dreamer. I was the visionary of it, but they made it happen. And, we went from August 4th of 1996, opening our first store outside of North America in Tokyo. And from then on, now there's thousands of stores in Japan. There's 14,000 stores outside of North America. I mean, wildly successful, and not everywhere, but pretty much.
Pretty much, right.
Yeah.
And so when you walk into a Starbucks today, now being retired, what's that feeling like, knowing that, I mean,
tremendous
look at
pride,
what we just did.
Tremendous pride, and if it's dirty, I'm still pissed off.
Still go around picking things up. I still go
clean condiment stands,
Yeah.
I don't say anything to anybody. I just clean condiment stands. I used to change light bulbs in the store. If I'd go into a store and I'd see light bulbs were out up above, I'd go get the ladder, change light bulb. It used to make everybody mad. And I said, why? I'm not too good to change a light bulb. I'm not too good to clean a condiment stand. And the people would say, yeah, it's my job. No, I said, no, it's my job too. And that's the way I operated. And that set the tone. And, but yeah, I get both feelings. If it's going really great and the service is great, I feel just incredible pride.
So how did you, going back to those days, and obviously I'm assuming we're traveling the world to do this, but you had a wife and children and all that stuff. And it's not balanced, because if you're gone for weeks at a time, it's got to be more of an integration, right? So how did you do that?
That's the right word. People think it's about balance. It's not about balance. It's about integration. It's about putting it together. Now, I was fortunate that my kids were older. They were, one was heading off to college and one was in high school, and my wife was getting her PhD.
Oh, wow.
So she was busier than hell. She didn't even know I was gone most of the time. And I was gone. My trips were long, 2 and 3 weeks at a crack. And when I'd come home, I was exhausted. She might want to go to the theater, go to a play, or particularly when she wanted to go to ballet. Oh, God, please.
You're like, just taking a nap.
And I was gone, and I'd come home, and the first thing I wanted to do was open the mail. I don't know what it was about the mail, but it was kind of grounded me,
Yeah.
And that's what the first thing I'd go for. I didn't even want to talk to anybody,
Just give me the mail.
Yeah, give me the mail. And it was strange. I look back at that and say, boy, was I weird. But it was integrating it all, and I loved it. It was the single greatest experience in my working life.
Wow.
Without a question. I learned so much from so many people that I couldn't speak their language, but I figured out a way to communicate with them, and they figured out a way to communicate with me. I realized I came back from that experience, and I remember when I was retiring from Starbucks, and I gave a speech at an annual meeting, of the company, and I said, here's what I learned, that we are all basically the same. We may speak different languages, we may have different skin color, we may practice different religions, we may eat different food. But at the end of the day, we all want to be treated with respect and dignity. We all want to love and be loved. We all want to grow as human beings. We all want more for our families and ourselves. And, you have to accept that in life. Those things that get in our way, they're just not true. And so that was such a great experience for me. I would do it again if I didn't have to travel so much. That was killer. And I was not a kid. I was over 50. It got me. But I remember all that travel. One day I ran into this guy on an airplane. He was the head of licensing for Baskin and Robbins.
Oh, wow.
Dunkin' Donuts. And he traveled more than I did. He was gone 200 days a year. And I said, wow. How do you do it? And he said, look, you can choose to fight it or you can choose to flow with it. He said, here's what I do. When it's light out, I work. When it's dark out, I sleep, no matter where I'm at. And I started that next trip. I just practiced what he told me. And was I tired? Yes. But I let it all go. And so the anxiety, that stuff went away.
What were some of your habits and rituals? Like, you knew day by day, no matter what part of the world you were in, these 3 or 4 or 5, whatever they were, things had to happen.
I always stayed in the same hotel. Always. Okay. Depending on where time I was getting in, like, for example, Japan, I'd get off the plane, I'd get on the train, take it to downtown Tokyo, take a taxi to my hotel. I'd put my stuff in my room. I was exhausted, but it was nighttime and it was dinner time. And I'd go downstairs to a great soba place.
Hmm.
Most wonderful place. And I'd order the same exact thing. I'd order soba, tempura, and I'd order a Korean beer.
Hmm.
And that was my dinner. And then I would go upstairs and I'd do a little work, and I'd go to sleep. And then I'd wake up in the middle of the night, I'd turn on the TV and watch soccer.
Huh.
There was always a soccer game somewhere in the world going on. And then I'd go to work, and I had those habits no matter where I went. It's
That's
because I
amazing.
found that I needed those habits to keep my equilibrium right.
Yeah. So were you a thinker, like a journal guy? Were you, whether it was meditation or exercise, I mean, any of those things that were a big part of your life?
I'd like to tell you that I was a big exercise guy. I wasn't.
Yeah.
Still not. And I'm 75, and my wife is saying, "You better get going here. I've had some health issues." And but I was an affirmation guy.
Okay. And so what'd that look like for you? What was that process? Was it every day? I mean, what was that
Yeah, yeah,
process
pretty
like?
much every day. Part of it had to do with my mission and my core values and how I do everything. And then I had a plan. I had a 5-year plan, and that was all part of it. And then I'd have affirmations around that, and I'd have affirmations about Starbucks and what I wanted to accomplish.
Yeah.
And then I would just stay focused on those things. And it wasn't a business plan. It was a Howard plan around Starbucks.
Yep. And so when you look back now, what's maybe, if there is any, but what's one of the maybe regrets? It's all easy to talk about our success, but what's maybe some of the regrets that you had in that run that you guys have put together?
Oh, made mistakes with people.
Yep.
Both keeping people too long and not keeping people long enough. Not maybe missing somebody that was really good,
Yeah.
and that I should have been able to help really develop, and I wasn't able to do it. Probably my biggest regrets, the two biggest regrets of my life, I've gotten over one of it pretty much, was not getting a college degree. Not for the degree's sake, but for the opportunity to have learned.
Yeah.
I'm a good learner, but I didn't really learn how to learn until later on in life. And I think that would have really helped me. And I think that's what college is for.
Sure.
It should be for. And the other thing is, I was capable of running a company. And although I did, and people would say in a sense of the word, because I had tremendous responsibility at Starbucks, I was capable of being a CEO of a company and either starting it myself. But I didn't have the confidence. And it took me to later in life to where I actually believed in myself and said, I can do this.
So I think that's amazing, right? Because I think so many people listening to this and just on the surface would say, gosh, here's a guy running one of the largest companies in North America. He's got to have a lot of confidence to get where he's gotten. And you didn't have that, huh?
No, I had lots of fears. I had lots of demons that I had to work with and work on. And I had tremendous anxiety. Always had anxiety. I mean, in the 21 years I was with Starbucks, I hardly slept a night.
Hmm.
And I would have a pad by my desk, by my nightstand. I'd wake up in the middle of the night, write something down. I'd get up in the morning and I'd just look at it and say, what was that? But I write, but that anxiety, and it served me well, and it hindered me.
Yep.
It did both. But I was more capable than I thought. And I look back at my life, and do I regret? A little bit, but Starbucks was such an incredible journey.
Oh,
I couldn't have asked for anything more than that, and Howard and I were close, and Orrin and I were close, and Orrin passed away this year. One of my best friends. It killed me.
oh,
But it was just an amazing journey that you don't. Yeah, I was lucky. I turned right instead of turning left.
yeah.
And I remember when I was about 27 years old, I was president of a furniture rental business in Portland, Oregon. And there was this billboard on my way home. And it said, luck is where opportunity meets preparation. And I never have forgotten that, ever. You got to be lucky, but but in order to be lucky, you got to be prepared. And you've got to recognize the opportunity. And I did with that at Starbucks, and I was prepared. I was 44 when I went to Starbucks, and I was pretty clear about what mattered in my life by that time.
Well, I think you got to take action too, right? You're saying, hey, let me come there for a week and not get paid.
Yeah, you got to do
What's he have to
something.
lose?
Yeah, Yeah, I mean, people don't think about those things, but you got to give to get. It
Yeah.
was my dad. Put the strawberries in the basket. Don't worry about getting paid.
Right. So let's go back a little bit. Fear. I ask this in every episode that I have, and I love the question, and I'm anxious to hear what your thoughts are. But your fears, you said you had a lot of them. How many of those fears that you put up here, right? That's a dangerous spot. How many of the fears that you put up there in your mind actually blew up to the magnitude you put them in your mind to be?
Not one. Not one.
I love it.
There was a book, an old book that was written in the 20s or 30s by a man named Claude Bristol called The Magic of Believing. And I was at the time married. I was first marriage, and I was unhappy, and my wife was unhappy, but I didn't know what to do about it. You know, getting divorced in my family was the worst thing you could possibly do.
Yeah.
And but I read this book, and in the book there was a chapter, and it said, when you're facing your greatest fears, imagine the worst possible outcomes, and basically take it all the way down, the steps all the way down. Well, I'll lose my job. I won't be able to provide for my family. I won't have any food for me to eat. And when you look at it those way, then analyze what of these are really real?
Right.
And none of them were real. I said, could I find a job? Yes. Could I feed my family? Yes. Will I starve to death? No. And I learned from that. But yeah, none of them were true.
I love that. And it's, you always hear false evidence appearing real, right? That's what fear really stands for. And it's true that.
But it's natural. You have to accept that in yourself. That's part of the journey. And, I had a stroke about 7 years ago. That was tough, getting through it. And then I've had some heart issues. And when I left Starbucks, when I retired from Starbucks, I did what I told my people not to do. I always would say to everybody, you are not Starbucks and Starbucks is not you. Don't confuse the two. You were still you. You were you when you came to Starbucks, and that's why I hired you. I was Howard when I came to Starbucks, but I fell into the trap that I told everybody not to do. And I became literally depressed.
Yeah.
Because I thought, okay, who am I now?
That's very, it's very profound, and I appreciate you being vulnerable and sharing that. So who are you now? So that's one of my questions.
I was laying on the sofa in Palm Springs thinking my life wasn't worth living. Seriously.
Yeah.
That, I had lost my way, and I've been working on myself forever, so I knew all the tools. I had all the tools, in my brand, but I just couldn't get to them. I was just depressed. And I was laying on my sofa reading a book thinking my life wasn't worth living. And this thought came into my head, and it just came out of nowhere. And the thought was, Howard, your life's work is still your life's work. And I repeated it to myself. My life's work is still my life's work. And it was so true. And I realized that my life's work was about servant leadership, about teaching people about servant leadership, about my values, about my mission in life, and my 6 Ps. That was my life's work. It wasn't about Starbucks, but it was now, instead of running an organization doing it, I was going to teach people to do it. And so I started mentoring second-year MBA students at the University of Washington. I started coaching other people. I started speaking around the world. I wrote a couple of books talking about it. And, then the journey went on.
That's amazing.
And my life's work, amazingly enough, that's been my life's work since I was in my mid to late 20s. So almost 50 years.
I love it. Well, my mission, I'm very clear on, is to help people achieve a future greater than their past.
Yeah.
And I think, when you're very clear on it for our listeners, when you're very clear on why you're doing what you're doing, it makes the days you don't want to do something that much easier to actually take the step and take the action to go do it. Right.
Yeah. I have this rule for myself, is that I will answer anybody's email or anybody's phone call. I don't care who they are.
Yeah.
Right? I may not always get to a personal meeting if they want one, but they'll always get a phone meeting. And sometimes it takes me a while to answer the emails, but I get to it. But I just don't not do it. I've done that my whole life.
I'm going to interrupt you real quick and to talk about and build on that for you, because so today is Wednesday, right? I emailed you, I think it was either Friday or Monday, so maybe 48 hours ago.
Yeah.
And here we are today, right? Yeah. And so you do exactly that, but it's also, if you take the two of our stories, one, it's see something on LinkedIn, It's taking action, sending this guy. You think, I put you on this pedestal, right? You're here. You're the 22-year president of Starbucks, a massive company. Who is Brett Gilliland in Little O'Fallon, Illinois? And then yet here we are 48 hours later talking face to face on the video.
Yeah,
it's
because
amazing to me.
None of that Howard Behar stuff, great stuff is true. I did a good job. I and I believe that. And I'm not that humble that I don't believe that. But also I believe that we all are on these journeys, and everybody can get to someplace, and everybody can have success, however they define it in their life.
Yeah.
Success isn't because Starbucks has 30,000 plus stores and has all this. Success is the one person that I touched that went on with their life and did better than they did when they were working at Starbucks. And I somehow helped that. That's success to me.
But don't you also think, though, that people sometimes we can get our own self-defeating thinking going, and they would put Howard on this pedestal? And I think hopefully the learning between our story here is just believe in yourself, right? And believe in, you said human beings, you put your pants on the same way I do, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And you reach out, you make something happen, and you have a great connection.
Yeah, right. And if you want to have a fulfilling life, you have to experience all the things in life: disappointment, fear, anxiety, winning, losing, a little pain. All those things go to make a fulfilling life. It makes a whole person.
I like it. So I see all these books in your background there. It looks like you got shelves and shelves. So are you a big reader?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I've got them all labeled. If you looked here, so it goes from philosophy to resources to education. And then over here is all the books by autobiographies and all different things in there. Yes, absolutely.
So how did that become a habit? Have you obviously been a reader for a long, long time?
Most of the stuff that I read is all about human journeys, about how to improve yourself. It's let's see, what's a book? I have like the Successful Manager's Handbook, Chop Wood, Carry Water, one of my all-time favorite books. Very old, but it's about the spiritual journey. A Curious Mind. Let's see. How
about the Magic Cup? Is that book in there?
Yeah, the Magic Cup is over here.
That's his book
right here. Yeah.
You got the Magic Cup, and It's Not About the Coffee are the two books you can get on Amazon, and go get Howard's books. They're phenomenal. Get those. But I think reading is a game changer for people. Don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can listen to the books, but it's basically what you're looking at when you read is other people's stories, and they help you. And those things have always helped me. When I was down, when I was struggling with something, if I could find, a book or something, or a quote. Let's see, you can't see it. I'm going to turn it here so you can see it, but you can see on my wall. Those are all quotes. And it used to be on my back wall. They were filled up. I'm trying to sell my condo. My real estate agent said I had to take them down. It was too full. But I have quotes like, you can't win a negotiation like you can't win a marriage. When you're in a hole, quit digging. To attempt to climb or to achieve without a firm objective of life, even if you achieve it, is to attain nothing. In a moral society, we must search for the questions, not the answers. And my most important quote, I love myself unconditionally.
Oh. So when you're in a hole, stop digging. How do we do that?
Huh?
When you're in a hole, stop digging. So there's a lot of psychoanalyst stuff I'm sure we could do with that.
Yeah,
but what's that mean to you?
Well, what it means to me, don't make the problem bigger. Don't get it deeper and deeper. And it's hard to do sometimes.
Yep.
I have one, there are no stressful situations, only stressful responses. A very important one. And another one is, let's see, do I have that up here? Well, my single favorite quote is a 2-word quote: compassionate emptiness.
Wow. Compassionate emptiness.
Now, and what it means is, and here's what was going on in my life. So, men have some bad habits. We want to solve our wives' problems. We want to solve our children's problems, when all they want is somebody to listen to them, not solve their problem. And one day I was reading this book, and up popped this quote in the middle of the book: compassion and emptiness. So that's interesting. And then I went on to read the next paragraph. What it means? It means being compassionate to the other person. They're talking to you about a problem, but empty of ideas, empty of solutions.
I like that. I'm going to write that down.
Yeah.
So what would you go back and tell yourself? You could go back, you said, you're 75. You could go back and tell the 45-year-old Howard something and give that guy some advice. What would that advice be?
The advice was take the risk. If you've got the desire to do something, go for it. And, there's no losing. As long as you believe that you can put food on the table, right? If you can't put food on the table and you can't get a roof over your head, those are different issues.
Yeah.
But as long as you believe you can do that, and I always believed I could do that.
Yeah.
I could sell furniture. I could do whatever. And that's what I would tell myself.
I love that.
Go for it.
And it seems like you're very in line with the circuits of success, which are attitude, your beliefs, and your actions ultimately get you results. I mean, those are the 4 circuits right there.
Yeah,
and it's everything you're talking about today.
Yeah, exactly. That's what.
So where can our listeners find more of Howard Behar?
Well, I've got a website and that you can go. You can contact me at hb@howardbehar.com, my initials and my name.com. I'm on LinkedIn and I'm on Twitter pretty much every day, although I'm getting down to the end of that. I've been doing it for 5 years, and I'm thinking everybody knows what I have to say. I've said what I had to say, and so I'm going to probably give that up in October. And if they want to hear more from me, they can write me a note.
Write you a note, right?
Yeah.
Well, if you could tell us one thing about Howard Schultz and what your experience was looking like working with him side by side for so many years, what would you share with people?
He was a ferocious competitor, and he just was persistent about everything that he did, and he loved people.
Yeah. Heck of a leader.
Yeah, he was really a great leader.
Awesome. Well, Howard, I really appreciate you being on the Circuit of Success. It's been just a complete pleasure to have you, and a joy getting to hear some of your wisdom and your words. And thank you so much for being with us.
Okay, thanks. And go St. Louis, huh?
That's right. Go Blues.
Okay. All right. Take care.
Bye-bye.